I'm doing a good thing. I'm a good person, I swear. I'm
Yep,
putting
get
that
it.
on live feed.
Yep. Yeah, that's
I
right.
didn't murder anybody. I didn't. No bodies buried.
Well, like murder's a low bar. Like if you can't not murder someone, like that's a pretty low bar
I
to
don't
have,
even need to
right?
go to church to be a good person. How about that?
Ooh,
Actually, I
ooh.
just recently started going to church, but I would hate to get into that whole religious aspect of it.
Yeah, we'll leave it
So
alone.
just
People
kidding.
have their opinions
Oh,
on that.
yeah, we're so
No one
leaving
ever
that
changes
alone.
their mind on religion. So, hey guys, we're live. You can probably hear my guest in the background. Reoccurring guest. We had to do a redo. Right? The last
Recurring
interview
guest.
sound was weird. We had some issues, and the topic is
Oh,
so
yeah, we did.
deep. We needed to continue. So, everyone, Kelci.
Hi.
Ta-da! There she is, right in all her glory. So we're gonna get back into this interview. The original interview was about Indigenous issues. It was more about like, racism in general. If you couldn't hear me on the mic, that's because the mic was picking up from the laptop. We fixed that. Got the lights. Cameras are good. It might do some kind of weird focusing stuff, but we're doing it, guys. And I really want
It's
to
happening.
touch this issue because it's a really big issue. It's a very important issue. And my moniker, my opinion on this is black people in society, we've been very vocal. We've been very loud. Our issues, we
Rightfully
mention them.
so.
Yeah, we say them. The Black Lives Matter, police brutality. We're out there trying to get things cleaned up for us, right? We know that there's crime in inner cities, and we're doing our best to police this up. But as far as Indigenous issues, we don't really see them brought to the forefront like black issues might be. So I brought Kelci on to kind of speak about that. And like we're gonna start like way in the past because this sort of topic goes way back. It's not just like a recent thing. It's really long time ago. And then even this issue continues till very recent history and probably even today. So I want to start with like the boarding schools, right? Like this is way back. Like how did these boarding schools go? And can you explain what these boarding schools are for my listeners, right?
Okay, well, like you were saying and everything, the only way to really make change is just to kind of understand and everything what's happening way, way back, what's leading into generational trauma and everything like that. And one big thing for Native Americans and everything that a lot of people don't know and aren't in storybooks and everything are boarding schools. And let me tell you, that's actually on purpose. Uh, boarding schools and everything were actually created by Richard Henry Pratt. And this is back in like the 1800s to the 1950s and everything that this actually started coming about, if not even a little bit earlier. But Richard Henry Pratt, he was in charge of prisoners of war. And these were Native American men. He taught these men English, how to read, how to write, dress in military uniforms. It was basically an assimilation experiment. Well, once he realized that he was actually working this assimilation experiment and everything, he took his results to the federal government. So in his findings and everything with they decided to fund his project because they're just like, oh, you could do this and everything? Yeah, let's do this. So they created the first Native American boarding school, which was the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. And his motto and everything was actually kill the Indian, save the man. I went ahead and wrote down and everything a part of his speech, actually. Was it? According to Richard Pratt's speech in 1892, a great general said, let's start the quote. A great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one, and the high sanction of his destruction has been an enormous factor in promoting Indian massacres in a sense. And in a sense, I agree with Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him and save the man. I was hoping that was going to go so much smoother, but it didn't.
No, you did good,
But that's
right?
pretty
Like,
much where the motto came about.
for
Yeah,
you guys listening,
I didn't
like
practice that.
this is deep, right? We're talking about like non-superficial issues. This is like serious stuff. So not a
Well, it
trigger
was such
warning
a
by saying,
social
but
norm and everything back then. As unacceptable as it was and everything to be black, it was even more so being unacceptable being Native American because we didn't speak any other language but our language. We didn't have any other culture and everything but our culture. And back then and everything, like whiteness was the standard for success and everything was judged by that standard. So if you didn't meet that standard, you were nothing.
I
So,
remember for like slaves, they would like beat the Bible into them, right? Obviously, learning certain things was illegal, but they would like beat religion into them. And then when freedom, when they got the slavery was abolished, and we have Jim Crow laws, obviously, but like you still see massive amounts of like black people who are very religious or very Christian, right? The very religion used to sort of enslave them, and it was used to justify the enslavement. And so,
It was
not that I
almost
have a problem with it.
brainwashing.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with religion. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's really strange, like the assimilation, right? They would assimilate you into the religion. They would kind of take you, make you, but that was all black people had. We didn't have anything besides that because we were slaves, right? With Native Americans, it was different. You guys had your own, like, you had land, you had like your families, your culture. It was all right there, centralized, localized, and that was taken from you. But the boarding schools, like, they didn't take the adults, right?
No, they didn't take the adults and everything because, I mean, the idea was and everything, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So the idea is to be able to take the children because children are so much easier moldable. I mean, with the tactics and everything that they use, they looked at it as they took the idea that they were saving us and that we should be grateful that they're even willing to do this, that they're even willing to assimilate us, because in other words and everything, you would be dead. But these, because they started off as military-based schools and then later turned into, military and Catholic schools. And once it turned Catholic and everything, that's where it got a tad darker. But we came up with like 150 boarding schools and everything. It went from that one, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School and everything, into 150 other ones. So they took 100,000 different Native American children from different tribes and then put them in these military-based schools in order to mold them. They took the clothes and everything that they wore. They chopped their hair off. And for those and everything that don't know, for Native Americans and everything, if you were to cut your hair, it was to be a sign of mourning. So in that aspect and everything, they're getting their heads completely cut off, and they're sitting here thinking, like, who died? It was insanely traumatic and everything, especially for just a small child. And you're thinking small children and everything between the ages of birth, 6 months and everything on up. So, and the government didn't care about how they got these children either, but they kind of like pushed the parents into that corner and everything of, because at the time and everything, the government was providing the food, so it was either give me your children or starve, give me your children or go to prison. They didn't care how they got it and everything as long as they did, because they had an assimilation project and everything that they needed to make happen.
So it was not only brutal for the kids, it was also brutal for the adults. But like, what were some of the
Yeah.
techniques
Could you
they
imagine getting
used?
your child taken from you and everything for a damn project? Just to
Yeah,
be
and
able
like
to.
forever too. You may never see your kid again. Like you have no idea when you're going to see your kid again, or if your kid even lives, because there was a high death rate in this stuff, right?
There was an extremely high death rate and everything. I think, and they don't even have like the full records on the death rate or anything like that. I think there was anywhere from 20,000, but I'm pretty sure it's triple that, because
Yeah,
out
I'm
of
sure
all
the
these kids
reporting
and
wasn't
everything,
great.
oh, absolutely not. And especially in order to hide what they were doing and everything on top of it, they didn't want the mortality rate and everything to be out there, because that's bringing even more judgment and everything into it. And the only people that could speak on it were the Native American people, but they kind of discredited that because it's
Yeah,
just kind of
didn't
like,
have
well,
a
what do you
strong
know?
voice. Not a
You're a Native
strong voice in
American. What do you know? You
society.
don't have to
So
say. Shut up.
yeah, man, like, and so one thing this kind of ropes us around to is like trauma. These events were extremely traumatic, right? Like you're talking about like
Extremely traumatic.
PTS level, obviously for the person,
PTSD.
but like,
Yeah.
but this is passed on in generations. Like you don't just like forget this kind of trauma, right? And so this has led us kind of where we are today. And like, can you explain like how this assimilation process impacted the trauma from it impacted the people today?
Okay, with this level of generational trauma and everything, it is to the extreme. It is to the extreme. And when you think about this kind of like generational trauma and everything, you have 100,000 Native American children and everything from the point, like I said, and everything from small ages and everything on up. This is a learned behavior. even today and everything, studies show that, small children from the point of birth to 10 years old and everything, that's them molding the world around them, how it works, how it functions and everything like that. So you have these children and having it be all they know. Like the suicide rate and everything for Native Americans was extreme due to everything that happened to them. And, if you think about it, rightfully so, because who can live with those kind of traumas? But within those traumas and everything, you're having like elders, great-grandparents, turning into grandparents, turning into parents, turning into kids and everything like that, and all of this going down. If you have a learned behavior of getting beaten every day or sexually assaulted every day or treated in such a way and everything every day, and that's all you know, 9 times out of 10 and everything, that's how you're going to treat your children. That's how you're going to treat your grandchildren. So it's a continuous trauma that's going from point A to point B. So, and even here's one interesting fact and everything, was that Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, or Mein Kampf, and everything.
Mein Kampf, right?
It.
Yeah,
Mein Kampf.
He wrote in jail.
Well, there's a volume 1 and volume 2. Volume 1 being made in 1925, volume 2 made in 1926. It was pretty much him studying how the people of America and everything treated the Native Americans. Like, he was pretty much inspired by the genocide and everything that the Americans put onto the Native Americans, well, the Europeans, onto the Native Americans, and he was inspired. Like, those are where the general ideas and everything came into existence for the Jewish people, in Germany. So it's like, it had like a tremendous effect and everything, not only on the Americas, but with these trade schools and everything, it wasn't just in America. It was in New Zealand, it was in Australia, it was in Canada.
Yeah, Canada, I know Canada has.
And all these countries acknowledged and reconciled and apologized in some way, except for the U.S.
The
Shocker.
U.S. is incredibly unapologetic, right? We have a very hard time apologizing for anything we did in the past. And, like, it doesn't matter how far back we go or how recent we go. It just seems like people in America are very pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get it done, no excuse, we're all treated equal, right? And I agree with everything but the last one. Yeah, it's literally... Yes, you should pull yourself up from your bootstraps. You are responsible for your day-to-day behavior.
But within reason, like this stuff was just
yeah, but you have to take this into account, right?
Level.
This has to be something you consider because it's not like we just start the race, right? Like they did a pretty amazing video. I don't know if it was PBS or who did this video, but they showed like what like racism or what like privilege, not white privilege, but just privilege in general means and what it means in society. So you say you're racing, right? You have 10 kids racing, and then they're at the start line, and you tell the kid, hey, were you able to go to school or travel to school safely? All right, take a step forward. Were you hungry? Take a step. Or did you not hunger? Were you not hungry? Take a step forward.
You have both of your parents and everything.
Yes, both your parents take a step forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you have school supplies? Step forward, right? Was this and that, right? So many reasons to take these steps. And so by the time you start this race, there are people who are just way behind. And you're like, oh, they should have run the race. Like, you have to address the reasons they're behind in the first place. And so, yeah, obviously there is like this.
Yeah, but that also
owning,
feeds into. I feel as though that also feeds into the whole, like, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Because those people who did not take an additional step forward and everything, like the privileged people and whatnot, they're hungrier. Like, they're going to fight for it more. You know? It's just like, I need this more than you do, so shit's going to happen.
I wish it was that easy. And
it's not for a lot of people. It's not by any means. But going back to the boarding schools, though, is that these weren't brought to light until like about 1928. And from 1928 and everything on to
World War II.
Yeah. And actually, ironically enough and everything, there was a lot of Native Americans that were put into the line of fire with, Vietnam, from Vietnam to World War I to World War II. But aside from that, the American Indian movement, also known as AIM, rose a civil rights movement and everything for, Native Americans, trying to be able to get that justice out there and everything and force more schools to shut down. So the government ended up handing over control to the remaining schools to the tribes to be run in partnership with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So that was good. That was really good because we didn't need those anymore. However, just as the era of boarding schools was fading, another assimilation project was taking shape, and that was adoption. So it was easier and everything for the government and everything to just hand it over. It's just like, oh, you want to shut that down? That's fine, because it just so happens that adoption is cheaper than the boarding
Yeah,
schools.
it's better. It's a boarding school
Yeah,
2.0.
it's just like, okay, shut it.
Take
All
the
right,
kid forever.
fine.
Yeah, crazy.
But they continued the assimilation and everything with adoption and continued to take these children from loving families and put them into white families to further assimilate them. And it was a hard sell for them, but that's where advertisement came in, and how molding is social media. How molding is being able to see something on TV and be like, oh, I want that. So they were just basically selling off these Native American children to adoption agencies, to white homes and everything, and they were using the tactics of neglect. Because again, we're working on the white standard, and white standard is right. So they used, okay, you're neglecting your child. We're taking them. Oh, there's overcrowding. And for most Native American families, you would have like, one, two, three different, families in set, because that was our culture. But to the white man standard and everything is just like, that's overcrowding. That's not good for a kid. So we're going to put it into a loving white family with just one mom and one dad, and
Yeah, I want to
it was just,
not pause, but I keep laughing, and it's because it's just like the idea of this is so preposterous. I don't think it's funny. It's what's funny to me is like you can draw parallels between what you're saying from then and now, right? Like that happens now.
oh yeah,
We still
oh
use these
yeah.
excuses to grab children, not in the same exact way, but it's very similar. Like any reason to pull someone over and get them in the system, get that criminal record on them, and just ruin their life. So. It's
Oh,
just
and they'll use anything. And that's the most
yeah, it's
corrupt
so
part of the
crazy.
government and everything, is that they're able to do this. The fact that they're even able to is terrifying.
It's
Like
like
they try to
pure human
justify it and
rights
everything through
violation.
laws and stuff like that, but it's just kind of, it's wrong. You know it's wrong, but you do it because you can.
And I
And
also I also want to say we're not super experts, right? Like this is the glory of this conversation. Like
absolutely not. We're not professional. This is
no
just, this is
casual.
just what yeah.
We
Yep.
literally just Google this stuff. That's how atrocious it is. And it's crazy that we don't learn
And
a lot
plus,
of
seeing
this
it
in
every
school.
day, you can't unsee it. You see this on the news. You see this on social media. You see this in your backyard. And I think you raise more awareness and everything to the black culture and everything as far as like what's going on, because it is quite literally in your backyard. We're these big cities and everything like that, but not a lot of people know about what's going on reservations.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
kind. It's weird, right? You have your own little piece of land, and you got your own rules and tribal police and tribal council and schools, and
Hmm.
and it's such a unique situation, and but as you can see, some of these places are very impoverished, right? And they're just not doing so well. You mentioned in the last podcast about the dirty water. The water isn't even clean, right? It's not even safe to drink, and
Hmm.
it's leading to issues
Well,
and health issues.
okay, let's lead into that. I was talking about the American Indian movement, which, bravo on the Black Lives Matter movement and everything like that. That's something that the Native Americans attempted with AIM, the American Indian movement. And we made a lot of change and everything, but not much. Like AIM developed a 20-point list to kind of summarize its issues with the federal treaties and promises, which they publicized, during their occupation in 1972, but only 12 points were addressed and for the treaty responsibilities, which protesters believe the U.S. government had failed to fulfill. And this very much is true. So I'm almost feeling like they were trying to say like, oh, well, we could probably do about 12 of those, and then ultimately nothing. Because we're thinking about today is 2020, and today, just off the Fort Belknap, from my understanding, from a few different sources and everything, I've been told in the Fort Belknap Reservation, there's Helicobacter pylori, commonly known as H, in the water supply, like the main water supply, man. And it's a type of bacteria that infects the stomach and the small bowel. This causes peptic ulcer disease, open sores in the lining of the stomach and the upper part of the small intestine. But some of the symptoms would probably be belly pain or swelling, loss of appetite, nausea, indigestion, feeling full without eating much, vomiting. But considering the fact and everything that they don't have access to the medical attention and everything that they so need, this can turn into internal bleeding that can become life-threatening. They can create a hole in the stomach that can lead to infection, scar tissue that can block the stomach or intestine and prevent it from emptying food. Like, this stuff is serious.
Imagine living with that. Like, this is like how privileged some people in America are. And I'm not saying white privilege. I'm just saying privilege in general, right? Like,
any color.
You trust your drinking water. That's something that some people can't even do. They know the water in their tap will kill them or will cause long-term health deficits, right? So it's just so crazy that in 2020 people can't drink their tap water, in America, in a country with a GDP of 20 trillion or whatever it is. We have like twice the next highest almost, and we have a guy worth 80 billion dollars, and we should be a very developed nation, but sometimes it doesn't seem like we are, and those issues seem to fall on the backs of a very few people. Native Americans, some black culture or some black communities. Flint, Michigan, right, has another one that had a water problem, and just due to mismanagement. So my question is, what do we do going forward to like level the playing field, to keep the people who have been disenfranchised, put them back in the conversation? Like, what do we do?
Oh gosh, that's so hard, but also so easy. It's just making people more aware. You can't fix a problem and everything if you don't know about it. And more awareness and everything is probably going to most definitely and everything bring more change. Like, there's a lot of statistics about Native Americans and everything that a lot of people aren't aware of. Like, the average life expectancy, for Native American people and everything is 5.5 years less than all races in the U.S. population. Like respectively 73 to 78 and a half for Native Americans.
That's wild. That's crazy.
That is wild.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't tell you part of the story, like, you're not paying attention, right? Like, obviously, life expectancy is tied to a lot of things. Early death, smoking, drinking, whatever, and drug use, crime. There's just so many things attached to that. And it's really wild that in 2020, a group of people has that much of a difference in the most developed country ever. We're not like the most developed country now, ever.
They continue to die at higher rates and everything than other Americans. Like, higher rates due to diabetes and kidney failure. Because, you look at a lot of the Native Americans and everything being obese or having drinking problems and stuff like that, but being obese and everything is like the lack of nutrition and everything, because they're living off the foods that the government is giving them. And as far as like the kidney failure and everything to drinking and whatnot, that also has to lead into generational trauma. Like, the part of the reasons and everything why people even have addiction issues today and everything is due to trauma, due to, trying to like numb, that pain.
Yeah, did you know that you can pass on addiction to your kids, right? Like, it's hereditary, and trauma in general, stress is hereditary. So if you have a life-changing event, that event can get into your DNA, and that DNA goes to your offspring. So it's wild, man. People don't know that
hurtful. Stuff. But even apart from diabetes and kidney failure and everything, there's heart disease, malignant neoplasm, unintentional injuries, like diabetes and, kidney failure are one of the leading causes and everything, but there's assault, homicide, suicide. These health issues are even matched by drug abuse. Like, drug abuse levels are higher with Native Americans and everything than any other demographic group in the U.S., and meth on reservations being a particular area of concern for tribal and federal governments. Like, and this is just having like that kind of access, but you're also dealing with that kind of pain. Like, you have like underfunded reservations and everything, underfunded ways of being able to get food. You don't have clean drinking water. Like, you have underfunded schools and everything, therefore not being able to be properly educated. And it's just like, when you have that kind of like pain and just all around fucked upness and everything, what else is there to do? Get high. And that's not good.
No. I want to take a quick moment here to my listener who's listening to this and is like, yeah, that's your fault, blah blah blah. I genuinely want you just to understand, like, you don't have to justify the behavior. I just want to raise awareness, like you said earlier, because these topics she's telling us about, it's so wild to me. It's mind blowing. Please have a little bit of empathy or sympathy and just think about what it's like to grow up in these situations and what that does to your future, to your chances of starting a business, of going to college, retiring. There's so many layers to this, and it's each layer has corruption and it has problems. Like, we really need to bring awareness to this because it's just not something that you don't hear about, right? Like, again, we'll go back to black issues. We've had a black president, right? Like, we've had black senators, black this, black that, black actors, black movies, all black movies, Black Lives Matter movement. Like, we're making progress in the right direction, right? And I think that's because we're so vocal about it. But, like, how do we get more Native American people engaged? Is it just awareness? Is that all we can do? Are there any sources they can reach out to, websites?
Now, I know we went over that
people
before and everything, like, as far as like, and it's not just Native Americans and everything that have access to these sources and everything. It's just pretty much everybody because it's not just one race; it's all races. But for Native Americans and everything, I think the main thing that would be able to bring change, particularly to the mortality rate and everything, is medical. They're really lacking in their medical field and everything. Like, they have an Indian Health Services, but, from the mortality rate and everything with diabetes and kidney failure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they actually have mortality rate they have the highest infant mortality rate among their people. While American nation sees it an overall decline, we're kind of like seeing that go up. Like, the infant mortality rate is 8.6 for every 1,000 live births. Like, that's greater than America's 6.9 sudden infant death syndrome, it's pretty much doubling the rate of their white counterparts.
That's crazy.
And
that is so
and that's
crazy.
terrifying. That is so terrifying. We're sitting here fighting for, our Native American ways and everything to come back, for our culture and everything to come back and everything, and we're dying as we're coming out. Like, it's insane.
I have a question.
Like,
kind of throw you on the spot here a little bit, right? This is more of a casual question. Don't take it too seriously. But, like, you said the healthcare part of it, right? Like, that's
right.
a very political issue, obviously. We have so many different approaches. Some people wanted to de-legislate it, not defund it, but, like, put it back in the hands of private companies, privatize it. Other people want it to be more socialized. They want it to be paid for by the government, single payer, healthcare for all. Is there any of that you think might help? Like, do you think there's an approach that politicians can take that would help us?
I think no matter what you do, that whole thing can get easily taken advantage of. You have government companies and everything that are easily taken advantage of by government, employees. You have private companies and everything that take advantage and everything by private employees. Like, there's always, where there's a will, there's a way. But I think it's really important in everything to try to get this medical situation taken care of, particularly on, reservations and, just lower to kind of like poverty places and everything, giving them more access. Like, Native Americans even have a lower poverty rate than their Black and Latino counterparts in America within public housing, economy, public health, and education. Like, you have 1 in 4 Native Americans living in poverty.
That's like third world numbers.
Yes, and even apart from that and everything, I think we should highlight not only the unjustification pointed towards like medical, but also justice. You have Native American women that have like a high risk of domestic violence and sexual assault. Like, 1 in 4 Native American women and everything will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in 3 Native American women will experience sexual assault in their lifetime. That's extremely fucked up to me. Being a Native American woman, that is fucked up to me because that's terrifying, but also insanely true. So
this topic is like
it
depressing,
hurts.
right? It really is because
Oh
like
yeah, it is, but it's real. It's
it's
important.
real.
Like no matter how uncomfortable it is and everything, you need to understand the fact that this is real. This is happening. This is something
Literally
that people need
your
to be
neighbors,
aware
right?
of to be able to make change.
It's crazy because like I said, the black movement is so vocal, and I'm sure like Asians have their movement, or I actually don't know honestly, but I know like their rate of success is pretty good. Like, and there are some weird stats. I won't get into all that stuff, but I just wish like the Washington Redskins, like not that I cared too much, but like it's in 2020 we had a football team when the NFL, the biggest league in the world or the country at least, the name was the Washington Redskins. You would never call someone a Redskin, and people were justifying it. Like that's how undershadowed Native American issues are to me. The pipeline thing they had in North Dakota, that was an issue that was kind of brought to light, but for the most part, it seems like we just don't have a focus on Native American issues. We just put it on the back burner, and I don't know whose fault that is. Maybe we need to, maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's
Well,
people like myself, but whose fault is that?
I think if you think about it, within fault and everything, that's going like way back. Like 90% of Native Americans were killed either through genocide or disease brought by the Europeans. Okay, because
90%.
we didn't have disease or the kind of sicknesses and everything like that before, but as
90%.
soon as the Europeans got 90% of Native Americans wiped out. Wiped out. But according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the current population of Native Americans is about 6.79 million. That's 2.09 of the entire U.S. population.
It's tiny.
Yeah, and the state with the highest population of Native Americans is Alaska. That's 13.77% in Alaska. Like, we have to run all the way to Alaska and everything to be able to live, guys. Damn.
Yeah. Man,
So
I don't know, man.
it's
Like,
crazy. Like, and I feel like that's probably why people aren't really so much aware and everything is because we're not everywhere. Like, you have the black culture and everything, that's everywhere. You have the Latino culture and everything, that's everywhere. You could go on YouTube, you can go on Netflix, you could go on the news and everywhere, and y'all are everywhere. But how many Native Americans and everything do you see, like, outside of, like, Native American populated states, such as Montana, that you actually see them? You would
yeah.
have to like go out of your way to watch a particular movie or watch a particular TV show and everything that's Native American based as opposed to just turning on MTV or, things of that nature. I feel like that's another reason why people aren't so much aware is because we're not everywhere. And there's a reason for that.
This
We're
issue,
declining.
this issue is fractal, guys. Like, by fractal, I mean like you look at one issue and then it splits, and there's two issues. And then you look at one of those issues, and that issue splits. And then you look at one of those issues, and they splits. And it's just like, pouring water down a tree. Just goes everywhere. And so there is no easy solution. But, like, please, guys, have some empathy, have some sympathy. Look into the issue. If you can donate, find links. Just help your fellow American, because that's what they are. They're your fellow American, right?
Well, I also feel like more Native Americans need to be able to speak on it. I think more Native American women, men, like kids even, because there's so many kids that have like access to social media. Not that I'm pushing that because that's a whole other thing, but I feel like we should speak for our people and for ourselves to be able to get it more out there. I was trying to be able to interview a few people and everything to be able to get more say-so on today's reservations. And, even if you're not on today's reservations now, living on reservations recently. Like, I'm Chippewa Cree. I come from the Rocky Boy Reservation in Montana, but even my knowledge on Rocky Boy and everything was, like, from way back when, while I was on it. But it's just, I would like to be able to see more Native Americans speaking on it, like, what's today's life on the res? Like, what problems do you face? What's with the schools, businesses, jobs, medical? Like, what I just learned about Fort Belknap and everything was just recent. And the sad irony to that and everything is that that's been around for a minute, and people are talking about it like it's normal. Like, oh, you got stomach issues? Oh, yeah, so do I. No big deal. We'll just go get some, like, beer or Mountain Dew and everything from somewhere else.
and then it will make it better, right? I know that's a
Yeah.
male problem too. Males are stubborn. The biggest killer in male is what's it? Stubbornness is the word. Stubbornness. Males just don't go to the hospital. They get an injury, they let it fester until it kills them, right? And so, like I said, I'm trying to be like happy about this conversation, and I'm trying to be upbeat, but it's so difficult because like not that it hits home for me. I've been pretty privileged in my life to avoid poverty for the most part, and I've sort of carved out my niche in life. But just thinking about like people growing up right now with these issues and just like having such a hard time just becoming level, like having the playing field level, like it's just hard to think about, So, and like you said, Hitler used Native American issues in his book.
He was
as, like,
inspired.
inspired
He
by
was
it.
inspired by the
Another part
genocide, man.
was apartheid.
You're like, oh, I want to be able to take out the Jews. This is how you took out the Native Americans? I have a few ideas on that.
That's like
Like,
the art of war. Like what? There was a country in Africa, South Africa, that did the same thing, the apartheid, which is basically like their version of slavery, segregation. And they looked around the world and said, hey, who has good models of slavery? Oh, the United States. Let's go ahead and use what they've done to their indigenous people and their black slaves, and we'll like put that in our system. And that went to the 1990s. It was like 1990, I think, was when that ended. And so Trevor Noah, the popular host of like the Daily Show, he was like grew up in apartheid. It's so crazy. It's just, man, like the issue is not that far off either. People think it's some off issue.
I feel like nobody speaks on it and everything is because like we've normalized it so much, It's just like so many people are dealing with it and everything. You'll have like one person complaining about something, and rightfully so, but then you'll have the next person be like, yeah, so do I, so? And?
Yeah, what?
And it's bad. And I feel comfortable speaking on these things and everything. Like, I have lived on the reservation for a short period of time, but also visited and everything every other weekend and everything with family and whatnot. But, I've also lived in poverty. I've also had to, like, live on, like, TANF and food stamps and Medicaid and everything because we weren't making it. I've also dealt with addiction and, sexual assault and, stuff like that. So it's not that I'm okay with it. I'm most definitely not. But it's because I'm not okay with it and everything that I'm willing to say something, because I know for a fact, through family, through friends, through peers and everything like that have dealt with the exact same issue, and sometimes worse, sometimes way worse. Like, if you hear some stories and everything, it's heartbreaking. And you know what they do about it? Nothing.
Not much at all.
Not a damn thing.
If you're
they just
one
suck
of
it
those
up
people,
and deal
guys,
with it.
yeah, if you're one of those people, please reach out to myself or Kelci. Again, I'll try to tag her in the video if you can comment or something. Or if you guys leave a comment on the video, she'll try to respond, or I'll get her to respond. We'll figure something out. But I really
we'll do
want
it. We
these
need
issues,
you guys to realize and everything. This does matter. It's not normal. These things are not okay, and without speaking on it, there can't be change. Sucking it up is not how things should be. Don't suck it up. Don't think that this is okay. Don't think that this is normal. You are hurting, and you are hurting for a reason, and your voice does matter. Like, I'm not college educated. Like, I have some college education, but I did not graduate. I do not have like any other diploma or certification and everything outside of welding. Like, but I do believe in everything that my voice matters, and so does yours. So
you hear that, listeners? She literally said it better than I could, right? Stole my fire there. But no, seriously, reach out if you. I want to hear the issues. I want to know what you're dealing with, because these things need to be brought to light, right? Like, I believe like everything you do in life is political, right? And that boils down to the simplest task, like buying earbuds, right? Like the tax on it you pay, the shipping of it, the rates, where it was made. There's so many things that are political, and your voice matters in that sense, right? You have to have a say to make things better. So please reach out to myself, reach out to Kelci. We want to get this issue resolved. If you want to do a future podcast, let us know, let her know. We'll get something figured out. Even if you just like pass the information on to us, pass the stories on to us. I want to hear that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I want to leave it today,
without
Kelci.
doing it together.
Go ahead.
We can't make change in everything without doing it together.
Yeah.
Like, knowledge is power, and power comes in numbers.
Yeah.
Like, we've all got to be able to stand together.
So that's kind of where I want to leave it, guys. just reach out to us if you have any questions. Also, quick little channel update. This is kind of off topic, but like obviously new cameras coming in soon. Sound system seems to be fixed. If it's better, let me know, guys. Lighting system is being slightly improved in the next coming days. There's also a podcast competition coming up for iHeartRadio that I'm taking part of, and so my content might be a little like staggered. I might not be doing it as much as possible, but I am trying my best to get these videos out. I just want to get the foundation there until my whole setup comes in, and then we're going to be like nearly professional quality. So stick around for that, and hopefully people like Kelci, my educated friends, continue to come on the podcast, and we can get this information out to you guys. So
Do it.
Any last words, Kelci?
Educate yourself. Be compassionate of your neighbor, but also be compassionate about yourself. Love yourself enough to say something. Love yourself enough to do something, and the rest will follow.
There you have it, guys. Okay, stick around for more videos. I am doing a giveaway for a PUBG, the Players Unknown Battleground game. So look for that in a future video, but we're going to drop the video here. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time. Ba-da.